In this video, I'm going to be going over how to build cutting boards that will look fantastic, be safe to use, and stay that way. Because yeah, cutting boards sound easy to build, but there's a whole bunch of options and a whole bunch of things that can go wrong during the building process as well as afterwards. For starters, I'm using walnut, curly maple, and wenge. You want to make sure that the wood you use is not porous, otherwise it can build up bacteria. Oak is a good example of a wood that you don't want to use. Also, stay away from using wood that has any knots or cracks for the same reason. On the more obvious side of things, first flatten the wood with a joiner, and if you don't have one of those, you can buy S4S lumber, which comes pre-jointed and planed. One of my favorite types of wood for cutting boards is called wenge. It's about 3 times the cost of walnut, but it turns black when a finish is applied. I'm going to be using thin strips of it for accents. Another tip I have is to stay away from juice grooves. Unless you have a CNC, they are extremely difficult to do, even with a jig. Although it can be done, a jig also causes a lot of burning if not done right, which can be extremely difficult to sand. They look great and also provide functionality, but any tiny errors will be easily noticeable. I only did them because I have a CNC to do them on, and it's still ruined a couple boards which I made into smaller ones. Make sure to use waterproof glue when gluing up the boards. My go-to is Type-On 3. Most boards will be slightly twisted after glue up. The less they are, the less material has to be removed. If you don't have a massive joiner like I do, there is a simple trick to still flatten the board. You're going to have to take the blade guard off. First run half of the board through the joiner. Take the piece over to the planer and put the flat half down on a piece of MDF. Next, run it through the planer. This will make the top part completely flat. Then you can just flip it back over and plane the other half. I made a bunch of different styles of cutting boards. The handle I like the best is as shown. I used a 3/4 white side ball nose bit and ran the board between 2 stop blocks on a fence to center the handle. For the edges, I used a mix of a chamfer bit, a roundover bit, and a small chamfer with a block plane. I thought the roundover bit looked the best. It's crucial that you spray the boards with water before sanding. If you don't, the first time you get the board wet, the grain will raise and it will be like you never sanded it. Sanding to 220 is enough. I spray the boards, sand with 120, and then sand with 220. There's a bunch of options on finishing, but don't think too hard on it. Just buy a gallon of food grade mineral oil. No need to get anything fancy. I bought it off Amazon and it is not expensive. For doing more than a couple boards, it's best to dunk them in mineral oil. Pour it into a large container and let the boards sit. You can dip them in and back out. However, if you want the oil to soak in more, it's recommended to soak them for 20 minutes. The oil soaking in deeper means you won't have to recoat the boards as often. Lastly, and also very importantly, use feet on your cutting board. If you don't, when the board gets wet, one side will be exposed to air and the other won't be, causing the boards to warp. With the right knowledge, cutting boards can last a long time.